Good morning. Uh, I think you'll learn pretty quick that it's always morning with Tad, so it's almost always good morning, regardless of the time of day. Uh, I only have 3 days of the week. Today's today. Tomorrow's the next day we meet as a class, and yesterday's the last time we met as a class. So when I use the words good morning, uh, yesterday, today, and tomorrow, um, you need to know what they mean. Here's some more family pictures. This is from 2020, but they're good pictures of our family. This was Patty and my 45th wedding anniversary. The upper right-hand corner, you can see Christy and Kevin. Christy's my oldest. On the right side are Lindsay and Mike. Lindsay's my youngest. And there in the middle is Patty. And that tall, handsome guy's me. Okay, so there's four really important things. Many years ago, I taught this class, and I really, really did not enjoy it. I never wanted to teach it again. And when they told me I had to teach it again, I totally rethought how I was going to teach class. And I thought, what is really, really, really important? If I run into you at farmer's market 6 months after the class is over, what would I expect you to remember? And these are the four things. These specific audit objectives and the definition of independence, the auditor's report, management assertions, and those three things we're going to hammer and hammer and hammer on this first section. They'll be on the first test. And then the audit risk model comes a little bit later, and it's the fourth biggie that Ted thinks is really, really important. So these three things, the audit objectives, the unmodified audit report, and management assertions, they're going to flow throughout the entire quarter. They'll be on test 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay. So the handout I gave you, it has the definitions, these audit objectives. So we'll talk about them a little bit. So here's the first page of the handout. And there at the bottom, you'll see objective AU section 200 over. And then in the middle, there's some new terms. Now, this isn't really important for Tad, but it may be important for you. A friend of mine used to teach a CPA review course, and what Mark told me is he says one of the things they do on the exam in the multiple choice portion is they'll take the previous wording, if it's real close to the current wording, and one answer will be the previous standards wording, and the correct answer will be the current answer's wording. So here's some words. A financial reporting framework. We used to just say GAAP, general accepted accounting principles, but now the international financial reporting standards are a bigger and bigger deal. Sometimes they'll say financial reporting framework, and that means GAAP in the United States and IFRS in the rest of the world. So be familiar with that word. Then the second is management's responsible for the preparation and fair presentation of the financial statements in accordance with general accepted accounting principles, and for the design, implementation, and maintenance of internal control relative to the preparation and fair presentation of financial statements free of material misstatement, whether due to fraud or error. Okay, so a couple things there. The first one is it used to say management is responsible for the fair presentation of the financial statements. Now it's management's responsible for the preparation and fair presentation of the financial statements. I'm not going to try and trick you with that on the test, but the CPA exam, it very likely would have something like that. Currently, management is responsible for the design, implementation, and maintenance of internal control. It used to be management was responsible for the design and implementation of internal control. So those little wording differences tend to appear as choices on the CPA exam. I'm not quite that finicky. Now, another thing is it's free of material misstatement, whether due to fraud or error. Get used to it. every time I see the words free of material misstatement, I'm going to add whether due to fraud or error. Is that correct 100% of the time? No, but it's usually correct. Most of the time when we see free of material misstatement, it's going to be whether due to fraud or error afterwards. So I'm going to miss a point or two every once in a while because I'm going to add it where it's really not there. But it almost always is. And that's kind of my teaching strategy. Right? I'm not trying to teach you to get 100% on the CPA exam or on my exam. What I'm trying to do is focus on those things that are correct most of the time, almost all the time. Those things that'll get you an 85 on the exam. So I'm looking for those patterns that are almost always correct. I don't worry that they may not be correct 100% of the time. Now here they are, audit objectives 200, 315, 500, and 700, thou shalt know. We're going to talk about 330 a little bit on one of the lectures, but 200, 315, 500, and 700, thou shalt know. What does tab mean by thou shalt know? Word for word? Really, really close to it. Really, really close. Now, if we look at 200, we can see that last line and a half has been lined out. Tad doesn't think that's important. So you don't have to memorize that part. However, you will need to memorize virtually word for word everything that's not lined out for 315. Now, my goal is not memorization, believe it or not. My goal is by the end of the quarter, I want you to go from memorize to learn to understand. So hopefully by the end of the quarter, most of you will say, oh, I realize why he hammered that. 315, the whole thing, virtually word for word. I'm starting to see a pattern here. They all start out, the overall objective of the auditor is, or the objective of the auditor is. 330, like I said, we'll talk about briefly in one of the slides, but it's not a memorize. 500 is a memorize. And you're going to have to keep an eye on me here. They changed the wording a little bit. I debated whether to go through and change all my slides for this because it's just a little wording. So Tad's going to say it wrong from time to time. And you're going to have to be on your toes. If I say it wrong on one of the slides or in one of our class sessions, you got to be on your toes and catch me. That's okay. It won't hurt my feelings. So make sure you learn the new 500 because I spent a lot of time redoing slides because of that little change. 700 again is a word for word, and you can see part of it is lined out. So you don't need to memorize what's lined out. Some of you will. And by the end of the quarter, like I said, I hope you say, oh, gosh, it wasn't really about memorization. These were really important things to learn. Definition of independence. Well, actually, this is the definition of objectivity and independence, but we're going to treat it, when I ask for the definition of independence, this is what I want, word for word. And hopefully when you see the slides, you'll understand why TAD includes both objectivity and independence here and pretends it's the definition for independence. Now, there's a bunch of definitions in the handout, and I'm really proud of myself. I color-coded some of them. And I think of the class as 4 sections, the first test, second test, third test, and fourth test. The stuff that's highlighted in green with a green background, that's stuff that you need to know word for the first exam. The stuff that's in the purple or lavender background, that's stuff that you need to be familiar with. And if you watch the videos and read the text, that shouldn't be a problem. And then the yellow is stuff that we're going to learn throughout the remaining quarter, but you don't have to start memorizing that for the first test. You'll see when those words appear that you should learn them. So I tried to color it. I'm not promising it's 100%, but I tried to color code the handout that you received or went online to get. On green is, oh man, I got to learn these for the first test. Yellow, I'll learn them later. Independent auditor's report. Uh, the way I teach it is we're going to learn the standard unmodified opinion, and then when do we have to change it? So when do we have to change our standard unmodified opinion? So you can see that there's a bunch of them there, but we'll start out with the standard unmodified opinion, and then in chapter 3 we'll look at all the different scenarios. I think in the past this is one of the areas where students have really found the handout helps. The day one handout, I'm going to call it the day one handout. It's got examples of all the different audit reports. The book just shows the paragraph where things are changed, and that's probably good enough if you're a lot smarter than me, but I like to see how the change fits into the report as a whole. So I find that handout very helpful. There's 9 or 10 different audit reports, the last 8 or 9 pages of the handout, and former students have told me they thought it helped a lot too. Page 166. Oh man, this is one of my favorite pages. So we can see if we can count, there's 12 management assertions, 6 for transactions and 6 for account balances. We're going to focus on the top 6 to begin with. So some of you are going to say, man, this is chapter 6. Why do I have to learn this already? Well, too bad, you do. It's only a couple pages, and they're really, really important. We're going to beat these up throughout the quarter. So what we're going to work on for the first part of this course are the 6 in the upper right-hand corner, those that are highlighted in red. Is it a highlight? I don't know if that's a highlight or not, but we're going to call it that. During my office hours, 9 to 9:30, I'll have office hours on Zoom for private discussions, things like if you need to talk to me about your grades. From 9:30 to 10, I'll have Zoom open, drop-in office hours. And then 2 to 2:30 after my class, in-person class, I'm going to have office hours for half an hour in Business 319. If it runs over half an hour, that's fine. I don't really care. I'll also have Zoom open while I'm in my office in 319. So you can come to Zoom, you can come to the office. And then for the online session, section 1, you're required to meet from 10 to 11 on Tuesday if your last name begins from A through K. And if your last name is from L through Z, then you'll meet on Thursday. The Zoom link will be Module A. Everything in this class is built on the modules in Zoom, or pardon me, in Canvas. So if you forget the Zoom link, it'll be available the very first module in Canvas.